We thought we knew Brad Pitt for a long time, the golden boy of Hollywood, a legend in the world of blockbusters, the man whose love life shaped whole eras of pop culture. But beneath the magazine covers, the fancy red carpets, and the movies that make $1 billion, Brad was keeping one secret hidden for years, but now he's finally telling it. He never really let go of one lady, one woman who had a bigger impact on him than celebrity, money, and family. Today, we finally tell you who Brad Pitt said was the love of his life. We go over every chapter before we get there. The climb, the heartbreaks, the scandals, the passion, and the last revelation that altered everything. It's not only gossip about Brad Pitt's love life, it's a part of Hollywood history. 2 weddings, 6 kids, more than 40 real relationships and reported romances over the course of 4 decades, a fortune of $300 million, more than 75 roles in movies and TV shows, and a job that lasted through the biggest scandals of the 21st century. But Brad had one emotional truth that he never truly spoke out loud, even with all the hubbub. Today, we find out about the woman who captured Brad's heart longer than any news story ever could. Before we go on, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for future updates. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Came from the Midwest. Before Brad Pitt became a Hollywood star, before the magazine covers, red carpets, and billion-dollar movie office smashes, he was just William Bradley Pitt, a youngster who grew up in Springfield, Missouri beneath calm skies. His childhood wasn't very glamorous. There were no agents, no movie sets, and no famous people to look up to. Just church on Sundays, school plays, and the wide-open fields of the American Midwest. It was the kind of environment where people worked hard, stayed humble, and didn't have big dreams. Brad's mother, Jane, was a high school counselor, and his father, Bill, was a stern but fair man who owned a trucking company. They were both Baptists and lived in a conservative home. They believed in being nice, having principles, and having faith. They never thought their son would one day govern Hollywood, which was like another planet. Brad had a spark even as a child. Teachers stated he had a natural charm that drew people in and made them pay attention. He wasn't the class clown or the troublemaker, he was just the boy everyone liked. He was in the debate club, played tennis, acted in school plays, and drove his buddies around in his Datsun. But deep down, he wanted something more. He felt like something bigger was waiting for him outside of Missouri. Brad studied journalism and advertising when he got to college, but just a few weeks before graduation, he did something that surprised everyone. He quit school, loaded his car with $325, and set out on a 32-hour drive to Los Angeles. There is no backup plan. No flat, no promise. He only had a quiet but strong belief that he was meant for something more. This leap of faith would change every love, heartbreak, and confession that came after it. Chapter 2. Early Love Stories. Before the Fame. Before the world knew his name and the paparazzi trailed him around the world, Brad Pitt was learning the first lessons of love in the shadows of a struggling actor's existence. These were relationships that weren't affected by celebrity, money, or Hollywood expectations. They helped form the man he would become. His first famous relationship was with Sunita, a British pop star whose career was already taking off while Brad was still trying out for commercials and doing odd jobs. They met in 1986, long before Brad became Brad Pitt. With Sunita, there was no pressure or headlines. They were just a young couple figuring out life, love, and their goals. Later, she would call him beautiful, kind, and soft-hearted, which was far different from the tough Hollywood persona he would eventually create. Sunita said, "Oh my God, what have I done?" when Thelma and Louise came out years later. She had seen the man Brad would become before anybody else did. Next up was Jill Sholin, who starred with him in Cutting Class. Brad was so into her that when she contacted him from Hungary crying, he spent his last few $100s going across the world to comfort her, only to find out she had fallen for someone else. That heartbreak stuck with him for years, teaching him that love could end at any time. After that, he went out with E.G., the voice actress, who is noted for her soulful personality. She labeled him deep-souled and intense, knowing that he had an ambitious fire inside him even before Hollywood made him a star. Then there was the infamous allegation about Robin Givens, which was mixed up with Mike Tyson's rage, and his brief relationship with Christina Applegate during the MTV years, when she famously left him in the middle of a date. Chapter 3. Juliette Lewis, Brad's first deep love. Brad Pitt was finally coming out of the shadows by the end of the 1980s. He was a little bit closer to stardom because of small TV jobs, auditions for commercials, and a few movie roles. But it was around this time in 1989 that Brad started one of the most important relationships of his life, with Juliette Lewis. Brad was 26 years old. Juliette was 16, 10 years apart, but emotionally in sync in a way that Hollywood could never write. They met while doing Too Young to Die, a dark TV movie where their on-screen chemistry swiftly turned into real life. Brad liked that Juliette was strange, creative, and brave. She pushed him to his limits in terms of feelings, art, and faith. Brad met someone for the first time who didn't perceive him as a good-looking guy, but as a man looking for guidance. Their bond was the most important part of Brad's early career. They lived together, worked on a lot of different things, and dealt with the early phases of stardom together. Juliette had already been nominated for an Oscar by the time Brad was still ascending. It didn't scare him. It inspired him. He liked how she thought outside the box, how creative she was, and how courageous she was. He didn't see these things in Hollywood very often. Brad would later declare in a 1995 Vanity Fair interview that his time with Juliette was one of the greatest relationships I've ever been in. He even said he still loved her 2 years after they split up, which is an uncommon thing for a man who is notorious for keeping his feelings to himself. Juliette, on the other hand, was tired of Brad defining her. She said by 2014, "People still think of me as Brad Pitt. I moved on. It's been decades." Chapter 4. The Angel He Almost Married. Brad Pitt had no idea that when he walked onto the set of Seven in 1995, he was going to star in one of the most important love stories of the decade. Gwyneth Paltrow, who is lovely, soft-spoken, and naturally smart, came into Brad's life like a breath of fresh air. Hollywood labeled them perfect, but to Brad, the bond went deeper than looks. It seemed like fate. Their interaction on television was eerie, intense, and so real it hurt. It was warm, close, and open off-screen. Gwyneth's family in Hollywood was well respected, which gave her a grace and sophistication that was above her years. Brad liked how smart, calm, and deep she was emotionally. Brad publicly called Jessica "my angel, the love of my life" at the Golden Globes in 1996. This was a big deal for a man who didn't often let others into his heart. Their connection was more than just passion. It was a partnership. They had the same goals, families, and hopes. Brad and Gwyneth's dad, Bruce Paltrow, were quite close. Bruce called Brad the son he never had. This made Gwyneth's decision even more heartbreaking. Brad proposed while they were on a special trip to Argentina. Gwyneth answered yes, but she was still scared even though she was happy. She broke off the engagement in June 1997. Later she said, "I was 24. I wasn't prepared. I ruined the relationship." Brad was heartbroken, yet he never said anything bad about her. Gwyneth would still talk about Brad with fondness years later, calling him a major love at first sight. When they met again in 2022 and laughed like old friends, it indicated that the hurt had healed, but the past was still there. This was the love Brad almost cemented forever, but it ended too soon because of timing, youth, and the heavy weight of what could have been. Chapter 5. Jennifer Aniston and the Golden Couple Era. Brad Pitt was a huge star around the world at the end of the 1990s. He was the world's most wanted leading man because of movies like Fight Club, Seven, and Legends of the Fall. At the same time, Jennifer Aniston became America's sweetheart as Rachel Green on Friends. When their bosses first introduced them in 1998, everything fell into place. This relationship wasn't full of drama or chaos. It was easy. Jennifer stated their first date was easy, natural, and comfortable. For the first time in years, Brad, who had been in complicated, passionate relationships, felt at peace. Their first time on the red carpet at the Emmys in 1999 rocked the internet. Even though social media didn't exist then, fans were crazy about it. Hollywood was fascinated. They were known as the golden couple, a sign of stability in an industry where partnerships sometimes fall apart. Their Malibu wedding in 2000 was one of the most costly of the decade, costing about $1 million and including a gospel choir, pyrotechnics, and 50,000 roses. Jennifer's father happily walked her down the aisle. Brad looked to have everything for once: love, a job, and a place to call home. Together, they started Plan B Entertainment, which would go on to win Oscars for movies like 12 Years a Slave. It wasn't just love, it was partnership, legacy, and a future together. But things started to go wrong around 2003. When asked if Brad was the love of my life, Jennifer paused and said he was a big love, but she wasn't sure. The news made it seem like a crisis. At the same time, Brad filmed Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Angelina Jolie. This relationship led to suspicions that would finally ruin everything. They broke up in 2005. Jennifer's interview with Vanity Fair was honest, moving, and unforgettable. She talked about her heartbreak, sadness, and anger at being turned into a tabloid triangle, yet she still said, "I love Brad. I genuinely care for him." This love story didn't end. It just stopped, leaving a pain that Hollywood never forgot. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel for future updates. Chapter 6. Angelina Jolie. Love, Fire, and Falling Apart. Jennifer Aniston stood for comfort and security, while Angelina Jolie stood for fire, unpredictability, and danger. Everything Brad had never seen before. The chemistry between them on the set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith was tremendous. Angelina later said that they sensed a connection growing even before they said it out loud. Brad and Jennifer had broken up by 2005, and Angelina was seen with Brad and her kids in Kenya. It was the start of a love story that would move people and tear them apart. Brad and Angelina weren't just lovers, they were a force around the world. They adopted kids, went to conflict zones, strolled through refugee camps, and leveraged their popularity to bring attention to humanitarian situations. Their family grew to 6 kids: Maddox, Zahara, Shiloh, Pax, and twins Knox and Vivian. Brad went from being the king of single men in Hollywood to a dedicated father. The press called them Brangelina, and they were a powerful duo that Hollywood had never seen before. But passion burns brightly and quickly. By 2014, they were married in their French home, Chateau Miraval. The wedding was small and personal, with vows exchanged and drawings by their kids sewn into Angelina's attire. It appeared like magic to everyone. But their marriage was falling apart on the inside. Fights, stress during work, problems with parenting. By the Sea, a movie about a failed marriage that was a symbolic representation of their own, was made in 2015. Everything changed in September 2016. The FBI and CPS looked into a dispute on a private plane. There were no charges, but the damage was done. Angelina asked for a divorce because of the health of the family. What happened next was a long, nasty custody fight that included allegations, counter-accusations, property conflicts, and emotional warfare. The pair that stood for love around the world fell apart in the worst way possible. Brad left feeling broken, weak, and forced to go to treatment. This change would change the rest of his life. Chapter 7. New Faces, Old Shadows. Brad Pitt stopped dating after his breakup with Angelina Jolie, left him heartbroken. And every lady who was seen with Brad made the news right away. People said in 2018 that he was dating Neri Oxman, a professor and architect at MIT. She was beautiful, smart, and nothing like the drama of Hollywood. She stood for something else: stability, intelligence, and creativity. Sources close to Brad indicated that he liked her mind more than anything else. She said he was a beautiful person inside and out, but they both said they weren't dating. Fans still thought of a new path for Brad's life, one that didn't involve the craziness of Hollywood. Then he met Nicole Patoralski, a German model who was half his age. People said they were dating, but it was short and quiet. The same estate where he had an emotional conflict with Angelina was Chateau Miraval, where they were spotted. A lot of people thought Brad was just trying to take his mind off things, not recover. Brad and Emily Ratajkowski were seen together in 2022 when she was single again. Their relationship was casual and based on their shared love of art. It was enjoyable, quick, and easy, which Brad didn't often get to do. Jennifer Aniston. Every headline compared the new women to her. All of the fans wanted them to get back together. And deep down, Brad knew something he hadn't told anyone yet. Chapter 8. The reunion that shook the internet. Hollywood wasn't ready for what happened in 2019. Brad Pitt came to Jennifer Aniston's 50th birthday celebration in a quiet way, with respect, as a buddy. There was no red carpet or press release, but as soon as the news got out, the internet went crazy. People who watched Brad and Jen in the 1990s suddenly felt hopeful. The golden couple is back in the same room. Then came January 2020, the night that broke the internet in two. The scene behind the SAG Awards. Brad has just won for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Jen has just won for The Morning Show. Backstage, cameras caught the moment. Brad caught Jennifer's hand, smiled, and said, "Oh wow," as she walked away. That one act made headlines all around the world. Are they going to get back together? Did they always care about each other? Was Jennifer always the one? After then, the online table read for Fast Times at Ridgemont High took place. Brad and Jen were cast as flirty characters who said seductive things to each other. Their chemistry was easy, playful, nostalgic, and thrilling. Jen said afterward, "It was fun. There was no need to be weird." Brad smiled the whole time, and at times he even turned red. It wasn't love, but it was a connection that fans hadn't seen since 2005. Chapter 9. Brad's Confession. She was the one. Brad Pitt has done hundreds of interviews in his 40-year career, but he rarely talked about his deepest feelings. He seldom made big statements in his relationships, except with Gwyneth Paltrow and Jennifer Aniston. But in the last several years, after treatment, getting sober, and mending emotionally, Brad became more open, honest, and vulnerable. Brad told close pals about something that astonished even those who knew him best in private conversations. He never truly got over his relationship with Jennifer Aniston. She was the one who never faded, the one he always looked up to, the person who made him feel better. People close to Brad say he thinks his time with Jennifer is the calm before the storm. Their marriage didn't end because they didn't love one another. It ended because of timing, temptation, and pressure from Hollywood. Brad revealed in interviews after his divorce from Angelina that he had been having problems with alcohol, unresolved trauma, and emotional suppression. These problems affected every relationship he had ever had. Jennifer, on the other hand, has always spoken kind things about him. She acknowledged this even in 2006, when she was at her most heartbroken. "I love Brad. I really do. I will love him forever." These remarks weren't just thrown out there, they were true. Years later, Brad eventually admitted that he felt the same way. He didn't tell the tabloids about it. He didn't say it to get attention. It wasn't a public relations move, it was personal. Truthful. Chapter 10. The Man Who Confessed. There is a man behind Brad Pitt's stardom who has been through storms that most people will never see. Brad went through one of the worst times in his life after breaking up with Angelina. He said in public that he had problems with drinking, emotional numbness, and childhood trauma that he hadn't dealt with yet. Therapy was not an option. It was a must. Brad faced his weaknesses, patterns, shame, and emotional blind spots over the course of months of hard work. Being sober made things clearer. Therapy helped me get better, and the truth came with healing. But as he got older, lost things, and healed, he learned how to think honestly about things. And that thought made him finally say, Jennifer Aniston was the one who stayed in love, not because she was flawless, not because their marriage was perfect, but she loved him tenderly, safely, and honestly, something he didn't realize until years later. Brad's confession wasn't a romantic declaration, it was a grown-up admission, the kind that only comes after years of agony, development, and learning. He is no longer the young man in a chicken suit, not the heartthrob that the paparazzi used to chase, not the same man running away from himself. Brad Pitt is a man who has lived, lost, learned, and healed, and finally told the truth that fans had always thought. Do you think Jennifer Aniston was Brad Pitt's one true love? Or was it someone else? Please leave a remark and let me know. And if you liked this in-depth look at Hollywood's most passionate love story, hit the like button and then the subscribe button. And come with me to hear more stories that are hidden behind the celebrity, the lights, and the news.